Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Gursant Singh, and as many of you may know, I was with the Yogi Bhajan cult for some 30 years. And I was around Yogi Bhajan, close proximity to him, for much of that time, in Los Angeles and also in Espanola, New Mexico. Now, I was doing guard duty, I was doing other odds and errands for him and his organization. So I had many opportunities to drive him places and also to drive his, quote, secretaries different places. This was mainly during the 80s and 90s. Now today I'm going to be reviewing a book, a new book, and it is titled Under the Yoga Mat: The Dark History of Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga. I highly recommend this book. It's available on Amazon and as a paperback, as I have here, or as a Kindle, where you can read it immediately. Now, the reason I highly recommend it is because it is a very good synopsis or summarization of many of these interviews that Guru Nishan Kar did over the last couple of years. And these were interviews with many of the former Yogi Bhajan followers. And it gives you a lot of good insights into what was happening there. It gives you insights into the frauds and abuses that were being carried out by Yogi Bhajan. First-hand accounts of the sexual attacks that Yogi Bhajan was doing against women. It also gives you insights into the abuses and the sexual harassment that was happening at the Yogi Bhajan school there in India as well. So there's a lot of good information in here. And for anybody who is thinking about taking Kundalini Yoga classes or this white tantric yoga that Yogi Bhajan taught, this is a must-read. Really do your research. I really implore you to read this book, and it recommends other books in there to read as well, which I also recommend. So there's a lot of good material in here, and it'll give you a really good background about the Yogi Bhajan group and about this Kundalini Yoga, the basis for how it was originally taught and put together by Yogi Bhajan. So if you're, like I said, if you're considering taking this Kundalini Yoga or Tantric Yoga, must read. All right, I want to go a little bit more in depth into some of the things that were talked about in the book, because I have particular experience. As I mentioned, I was around Yogi Bhajan for 30 years or so. So I had firsthand experiences with him, and I've done a lot of research. Probably a lot of you know. I've been highly critical of Yogi Bhajan's teachings for the last at least 14 years or so. And I've come across a lot of material and a lot of good articles and research documents that support the idea that Yogi Bhajan was a fraud, that he was abusive, he was a real deceptive and manipulative person who was really only after power, money, and sex. That's my conclusion after doing years of research on this and talking to a lot of individuals who knew him personally and then also did a lot of research about him. So let me go to this first section of the book. This is on page 192 of the book we're reviewing here. And it is in the chapter named Sexual Abuse. Yogi Bhajan on Rape. That's the title of this chapter here. And I'll just read for you what it says here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. And I'd like to go a little more in depth about what Ellis Conan, by the way, with Guru Nashankar are the authors. So this is what Ellis Conan says. Yogi Bhajan on rape. Before we listen to Yogi Bhajan, a brief side note. Several sources mention that Yogi Bhajan took a neuro-linguistic programming, NLP for short, course. Now this was new to me when I read this. I, of course, knew Yogi Bhajan was using NLP. I was one of the first members of 3HL, or members of Yogi Bhajan's group, that took this certification course in Santa Cruz, California, there with the original founders of this NLP. I took the course with Grinder and Bandler. That was in 1980. So I was one of the first persons, along with this Stephen Josephs, who became a trainer in this NLP. And so I'm very familiar with this neuro-linguistic programming. So here we go. It says, a former 3HO member told me YB was instructed on the technique by one of his followers who had attended the NLP training. And I think it was Stephen Joseph, if I'm not mistaken. And then it says here, NLP became popular in the mid-1970s. Its reframing techniques aimed at changing a person's behavior by consciously shifting the context or meaning of words. This pseudoscience was first used in therapeutic settings, but it soon attracted the interest of others as well. So let's talk a little bit about that. NLP is a very manipulative technique and is used by some psychologists or people who do therapy and healing people that have phobias and other psychological problems. I witnessed this when I took the course up there in Santa Cruz in 1980, how Grinder and Bandler would hypnotize people and have them do things they didn't even remember they were doing. And it is a very, like I said, very manipulative, and can be used for good, for healing people. But it can also be used, as Yogi Bhajan, I believe, used it, for indoctrinating people into his cult, persuading people to get into his cult. And I'll tell you specific instances where I feel Yogi Bhajan misused this technique. He would have people lay out after doing an intensive yoga meditation, and then he would talk in a very low tone voice, very hypnotic type voice, and put people literally into a trance, and then play the gong like this. And then he would have very suggestive meditation, guided meditation, he would call it, and put people more into a place where they would be more susceptible to cult indoctrination. And I think this is one of the ways that Yogi Bhajan really used this. And they use these techniques still in these Yogi Bhajan Kundalini Yoga teacher training courses. It's still used like this. Now also Yogi Bhajan would use these techniques when he was, quote, counseling people. And I witnessed him many times just go on in just using psychobabble, really, and trying to confuse people. And trying to, what he would do is he would develop this rapport. This is one of the things that is happening, mirroring the other person's actions, and develop this where he was actually controlling what they were doing and how they were taking in this information. And I believe he was master of this technique even before he studied the NLP. They talk about in this NLP course that I took in 1980 about how there are many, many people who used NLP, these anchoring techniques and these developing rapport and persuasion and manipulation techniques. They used them even before they knew what they were called. Bandler and Grinder just put a label on these techniques. Even from a personal experience, my father is a really good salesman, and I thought back about it and I saw that he really used these techniques as well. Many people don't know exactly what they want to buy, and then you get more specific and find out what they want. It's very, very, very common technique that's used in sales in order to persuade somebody to buy something. You don't really have to know that you're using NLP to be using it. And I think that's what was going on with Yogi Bhajan. And he persuaded people to get into his cult, vulnerable people especially, who didn't really know what they wanted, who didn't really have a strong sense of self-confidence or sense of self and who they are. And he would get them into his cult, take advantage of them, take their money, take their power away from them, basically. And it's probably you've all read and heard, Yogi Bhajan controlled every aspect of our lives. And it was not uncommon for him to arrange marriages, which they talk about in this book. He would really tell us everything to do. And I think back on it now, and I really let Yogi Bhajan take control of things. So it wasn't until about after he died, I suppose. Well, I think probably before he died in 2004, I was starting to question him, and we had several arguments. So I was starting to wake up to the fact that he was really a fraud. Anyway, it wasn't actually until after he died that I started really speaking out, because I was trying to communicate with other people who I thought were my friends and turned out to be just really caught up into this cult so much that they couldn't see the light of day. So this, like I said, is talked about in the book, how Yogi Bhajan was very manipulative, how he used these NLP techniques to manipulate people, and how he took advantage of these vulnerable people. So I wanted to point that out first. Now, the next part of the book that I want to point out that I'd like to go a little bit more in detail about, that I have personal experience with, is a author, Sikh scholar, I should say, by the name of Dr. Gursant Singh. Now, when I first started to research about people who are criticizing Yogi Bhajan, I came across this Dr. Gursant Singh. I had spent time in India starting in 2007, and I was arrested on false charges there and had to stay in India under what I called house arrest, country arrest, I'm sorry. And that's a whole different story. You could read about it in my book, Confessions of an American Sikh. But I really had an eye-opener, if you will, when I started to read this Dr. Gursant Singh's writings. And he spent years with Yogi, not years, but months with Yogi Bhajan in 1977 here in the United States, and traveled with him. And Dr. Gursant Singh was a Sikh scholar and historian of quite renowned status. So I started reading his books and realized Yogi Bhajan was twisting the Sikh religion, twisting the Sikh scriptures to fit his tantric and Kundalini yoga. And so the authors of this book talked about this, but I'd like to go a little bit more in depth. Let me read what Ellis Conan says about Dr. Gursant Singh first, and then we'll talk about it. Gursant returned to the house of his host late at night when Bhajan, that's Yogi Bhajan, had already left. The next day they met at the 3HO ashram and spoke for 3 hours. That's Yogi Bhajan and Dr. Gursant Singh. Gursant questioned Bhajan about his teachings and reported the details of this meeting in his book, Sikhism and Tantric Yoga, a critical evaluation of Yogi Bhajan's Tantric Yoga in the light of mystical experiences and doctrines. he wrote, Dr. Lochhan Singh wrote, it during his U.S. trip in 1977 because he felt it was necessary to document what he had experienced with Yogi Bhajan and his 3HO community. So she quotes here from the book, Sikhism and Tantric Yoga. And by the way, it is available on my website, gurmukyoga.com, in its full text as a PDF. You can download it for free. And I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. It's a very good read. It was a real eye-opener for me when I first read it, how Yogi Bhajan was twisting the Sikh religion and using it for his own purposes. This is very important because when somebody like Yogi Bhajan is twisting the Sikh religion and cutting the Bani and using it for mantras and tantras, you really are getting a really toxic meditation or energy or whatever you want to call it that is not according to Sikh teachings, and it can lead you really down the wrong path. That's why I bring it up here. So Yogi Bhajan said here, Tantra, why does he call it? No, this is actually Dr. Lochhan Singh speaking, sorry. Tantra, why does he call it? Is at his, Bhajan's basic faith, while Sikhism is only an offshoot of his tantric system. The reason he gave was that he believes Sikhism has no meditation techniques. I told him, Dr. Lochhan Singh told him, that Sikhism has more specific, fruitful, and spiritual exalting techniques of meditation, but his misfortune is that he has never studied Sri Guru Granth Sahib and never cared to live according to Sikh discipline. I think this really sums up how Yogi Bhajan taught, how he lived his life. It really struck home with me when I read about Dr. Lochhan's description of Yogi Bhajan. I witnessed Yogi Bhajan practicing these Hindu pujas. He would give out Hindu pujas to do to students, and he taught a Hindu meditation that he includes in this Aquarian sadhana that he requires all of his students to practice even to this day. They still practice it and chant this Hindu mantra. Now, I want to tell you, I'm not against Hindus per se, but somebody like Yogi Bhajan who professes that he is a Sikh, this is complete sacrilege, that he should be teaching Hindu mantras. This takes you right down the wrong path. Guru Gobind Singh Ji said that the Hindus are on the wrong path, and that he gave specific practices. Behind me are the 52 hukams of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and nowhere there does it describe to chant Hindu mantras. In fact, we should only be, as Sikhs, be practicing the recitation of Gurbani and devotional service to Waheguru, or God, the Almighty God that is indescribable and infinite. So Yogi Bhajan was like more of a Hindu than a Sikh. His mother was Hindu. I think he got a lot of these false teachings from her, and then also he spent a lot of time in the Shivananda ashram, which is a Hindu ashram there in Rishikesh too. I talked to people who actually were witness to that. I talked to, when I was staying there, you can read about it in my book, I talked to people who, a pundit who said that he was the family pundit for Yogi Bhajan, which is totally against Sikh teachings to have a pundit and to consult astrology and Jyotish, which is the Hindu astrology pundits. So Yogi Bhajan did a lot of things that were completely against Sikh teachings and against what's called the Sikh Code of Conduct, the Sikh Maryada, and the Maryada and the Rahets of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. He really violated a lot of those, and he taught us to do things like wear large gems, which he did, which are completely against Sikh teachings, to wear them for the days of the week, or to try to cast away evil energy by giving reverence and worshiping deities, Hindu deities, by wearing these different stones. And he was into all of that. It's, you know, it was really just very disturbing and an eye-opener for me when I realized just how much Yogi Bhajan was distorting and twisting the Sikh religion for his own tantric and Kundalini purposes. So let's talk a little bit about Yogi Bhajan's Tantra and his idea of using these sacred Sikh scriptures for mantras and tantras. What he was doing was called Kachabani. He was cutting the bani and using part of the Gurbani for a mantra, for a secret magical mantra that would give you health or wealth or different kinds of power, this type of thing. He even had a meditation that would destroy your enemies. And I think, no doubt, the Yogi Bhajan people are probably using that against me. And so I have to laugh at that. Anyway, but the important thing to realize here is that Yogi Bhajan was taking these sacred Gurbani texts and using them for his own purposes, his tantric and Kundalini yoga. In the Sikh tradition, we only recite Gurbani in its full shabad, or its full text. So we don't use them as mantras to gain power or to gain prosperity or whatever it is like that. I just can't emphasize how important this is, because for people who are taking Kundalini yoga and these tantric yoga courses, they're taught by their teacher trainers to do these different prescriptive meditations that Yogi Bhajan gave out, these crazy meditations that, like I said, they steal from the, appropriate from the Sikh faith, and then use them in these crazy mantras, crazy things that Yogi Bhajan gives out. It's a man-made thing. Yogi Bhajan did these as a man-made meditation, and it will lead only to debauchery. That's what this Dr. Tilochan Singh says there. And so Yogi Bhajan would give out these meditations, chant them 11,000 times, or you'll be able to see auras, or you'll have prosperity. Chant, do this for 40 days. You'll be liberated. He made all kinds of ridiculous and nonsensical statements like this, false statements as well, just to get people hooked on this magical thinking that they could do these mantras and these kriyas that would give them, happiness forever or whatever like that. And so this is where people are misled. And I really want to emphasize how deceptive this is of Yogi Bhajan to try to create this false narrative, if you will, completely give out false information about how you can, be doing these meditations for all of this stuff. I mean, I know as a personally, I tried doing this aura strengthening exercise for 30 years or so. Ever since I was in 3HO, I thought, oh, it'd be great to see auras and have all these, have this power to be able to see auras and everything. And so I did this aura strengthening exercise for many, many years. Maybe it wasn't the whole 30, but whole time. And I never saw auras, of course. And it's good I didn't, because, I think Guru Sahib, Waheguru, the Sikh Gurus guided me and guided me out of this Yogi Bhajan nonsense. Because with Sikhs, the idea is to recite Gurbani out of devotion, out of love. And we don't expect things in return. We don't do these meditations or these, we don't do these recitations of Gurbani in order to get things. It's more out of devotion and love. Sure, if you're doing things out of devotion and love, you will no doubt be blessed. The idea is, though, it is only by the grace of Waheguru, only by the grace of God, that anybody is blessed with anything. It's not by our own doing. It's not by us sitting down and doing a 40-day meditation that we, okay, I expect to get something if I do this, for 40 days. It's not by that. It's only out of devotion and love that we are reciting these scriptures, that we are doing kirtan and Gurbani kirtan, and just being absorbed in that love of Waheguru. This is the most high, beautiful happiness in my mind. So that brings me to this other idea that Yogi Bhajan tried to promote, if you will, that his Kundalini yoga, that his tantric yoga would provide happiness, that it would give the practitioner a sense of well-being and happiness and even liberation, he talked about. So I want to relate a story just that I had happen to me recently. I protest up here in front of the Yogi Bhajan ashram here in Espanola, which is just a stone throw away from my house. I can actually see the gold dome up here. So last week I was up there protesting, and so somebody I hadn't seen in 45 years drove by. His name is Ravi Tej Singh. I lived with him in the Eugene, Oregon ashram. So he came by, and his diesel-powered Mercedes stopped there, and with the motor running, without any kind of respect to try to listen to what I'm saying. But he was talking to me, and I was trying to ask him about what he got out of doing the Kundalini yoga, and why he continued to do the Kundalini yoga and tantric yoga. He told me that he could see auras as a result of doing this Kundalini yoga, and that it made him feel good. So, I think that at the least he's delusional about this, because I've read a lot, and there's no such thing as these auras that these people think they see. Anyway, let's leave it at that and just say, well, okay, maybe he's feeling good and he sees some bright lights around people and things like that from doing Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini yoga. Well, how does he know that he really feels good about these things? And how does he know that he's in happiness? I think back in my life when I really didn't have the guidance from the true Guru, from Guru Sahib, as we know it as a Sikh. I just really had a really hard time. Things really, as you can read about in my book, Confessions of an American Sikh, were very, very difficult. And this was when I was following Yogi Bhajan, and following somebody who was really a false guru. And by the way, Yogi Bhajan was really a guru in all but name. We called him a spiritual teacher, but I heard him say that he was the guru once. And many other people heard him say that as well, that he said he was the guru. So when I was following Yogi Bhajan, things were not going very well, to say the least. Like I said, I had 2 marriages which were failed. I failed businesses. You can go on and on. And all of those people who followed Yogi Bhajan, who followed Yogi Bhajan's mantras, I feel like they really had really, really rough times as well. I was in business with a guy who was one of the right-hand men with Yogi Bhajan. He went to jail for 18 months for fraud, And Yogi Bhajan was instructing him to do these toner boiler room operations, which is talked about in this book, by the way, too. And I have to say, the authors have done a very good job of presenting a lot of these crimes of Yogi Bhajan and crimes of Yogi Bhajan's henchmen and the people who were around Yogi Bhajan and took orders from Yogi Bhajan. There was drug smugglers, there was gun smugglers, you name it. I mean, Yogi Bhajan was just enabling all of these people, and let's have no doubt about it. Yogi Bhajan was pulling the strings on all these people. I know for a fact. He would meet with the Hari Jivans for, every day. We would go up to La Scala and have lunch, and it was just, it was a real racket, if you will. Okay. Anyway, getting back to my point about how things really didn't go well when I was following Yogi Bhajan as my, spiritual teacher, if you will, or guru. So, I have to really question these people who say that they're happy and the Kundalini Yoga really helps them. Well, it might, help them in the short run. They might get some powers. They may think that they can see auras. They may think that they can have wealth or prosperity, But those are all very short-lived. And, people, especially in the West, are so interested in these very short-lived type of happinesses that I really question whether this Kundalini Yoga of Yogi Bhajan's really works, as they say. They say, this is the most common explanation of why they continue to do Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga. They say it works. Well, I really want to know if it works in the long run and not in the short run. That would be my question. They may get high from it, feel like they're like a high from a drug or something like that. But all those things are very short-lived. And, as Yogi Bhajan, his own life, gives witness to, is that, like, Yogi Bhajan only lived to 75. He had horrible diabetes. He had a kidney. God knows how he got that kidney. He had a replacement kidney. And so he had toes amputated. Heart condition, you name it, he was really in bad health. And this was a guy who was supposed to be teaching this Kundalini Yoga that was supposed to give you great health and everything. Not only that, these people who say that they gain great benefit from Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga, they say it's a yoga of awareness, why weren't they aware of these frauds and all these things that Yogi Bhajan was committing? If they were, so aware from doing Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga. You have to look at Yogi Bhajan's history. Philip Dislep, who is also mentioned in this book, is a doctoral candidate, and he's done a lot of research on Yogi Bhajan's history, and really did research on Yogi Bhajan's claims to be this, quote, Mahan Tantric, and to have these titles of Sri Singh Sahib and all this. I think pretty much Philip Dislep has discredited all of these legacy claim, the lineage claims, I should say, of Yogi Bhajan. This Sant Hazara Singh that Yogi Bhajan claims that he received the Mahan Tantric title from is just a fictitious character. There's no historical evidence of him at all. The only evidence of any of this comes from the mouth of Yogi Bhajan or his students, who are just parroting what Yogi Bhajan said. So you have to look at all of this. There's really no lineage of Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga or Tantric Yoga. And this really, I think, draws into question if it's really any good. And I think that it will lead you down the wrong path So I want to point out how Yogi Bhajan twisted Sikh history in order to try to give his titles of Mahan Tantric and his titles of Sri Singh Sahib credence. And so Dr. Chaloshan Singh talks about this too in his books. And so I came across a lecture where Yogi Bhajan was speaking informally to the Khalsa Council. And so one of the students there in this lecture, this is in 1980, and I posted this on my website where he's actually, I'm quoting, not quoting Yogi Bhajan, but actually showing or giving audio from this lecture on the video that I have posted there. So Yogi Bhajan is faced with this question from his student who asks, he says, what is the lineage of the Kundalini Yoga? And so Yogi Bhajan first says, well, it came from Krishna, and then it came to Guru Ramdas, or Krishna to Guru Nanak to Baba Siri Chand, and then to Guru Ramdas, and then of course to him. And so this student says, well, where's the evidence of it? I haven't been able to find it. And so Yogi Bhajan says, well, I pass. I pass on that. Go ask one of the head of religion and somebody else who's knowledgeable about that. I pass on this. He couldn't even answer that. And so it's really evidence that Yogi Bhajan didn't really know what he was talking about. And then he refers to a shabad in Gurbani that says, Raj Yog takatadiyan Guru Ramdas. Now this is a shabad that Yogi Bhajan used to justify that Gurbani, the Sikh scriptures, talk about Kundalini Yoga and talk about Guru Ramdas being the head of, being the receptor of this Kundalini Yoga lineage. So it's completely false translation, and Yogi Bhajan knows it. Dr. Chaloshan Singh points out in his book that Raj Yog refers to a secular and spiritual throne. It doesn't have anything to do with these nonsensical yoga asanas of Yogi Bhajan. And Yogi Bhajan misuses that, and that uses a translation that is completely false and tries to justify his Kundalini Tantric Yoga that is within Gurbani. And it's just really sacrilege. When I read that in Dr. Chaloshan Singh's book, it really opened my eyes about how Yogi Bhajan was just a false teacher, and how he was just deceiving us into thinking that we were Sikh yogis, as he used to call it, and that he was given this Kundalini and Tantric Yoga was passed down through Guru Nanak and then Guru Ramdas. And Guru Ramdas came to him in some vision and revealed this yoga to Yogi Bhajan only. And it's just unbelievable that Yogi Bhajan, a customs officer who has any kind of family or historical lineage, would be given a vision by Guru Ramdas Ji and then revealed some secret Kundalini Yoga that was never mentioned in Sikh history. And then Yogi Bhajan was instructed to reveal it only to these Western Sikhs and, Westerners who were thirsty for this knowledge and who were blessed to be able to have it. It's just complete nonsense, and it's really sacrilege. It's really an insult to the Sikh faith. It's really something that is very makes me very angry, to be completely clear about it. And that's why I protest up here constantly, and I protested at the 3HO summer solstice sadhana event up here in the mountains, and maybe some of you saw that. It really makes me very, very angry that the 3HO people continue to project and to promote this false narrative, this false history that Yogi Bhajan put out there. It's just really very, very disturbing. Now, I want to point out that many of these Yogi Bhajan followers are still wrapped up and still under this spell of Yogi Bhajan. I just see it, I just don't see it any other way, that they're really continuing this. And I think there's probably several reasons for it. I think the main reason is that they can't come to grips with the fact that Yogi Bhajan was a fraud, that his Kundalini Yoga is a fraud, and they just don't want to let go of it. It's called cognitive dissonance in psychological circles. Psychologists have named it that. And what that is, excuse me, what that is a state of mind where somebody has been involved in a group like this, or they've been involved doing something for so long that you have to rationalize why you did it for so long. Some people have been practicing this Kundalini Yoga for 40, 50 years, and it's just very difficult for them psychologically to let go of it. They want to separate the teacher from the teachings. That's what they say, because they're pretty much resigned or willing to accept that Yogi Bhajan was an abuser and that he raped many women and that he sexually attacked many women, as outlined in this Olive Branch report. And so many of them are willing to accept that, but they're not willing to drop these teachings, and they don't want to accept that Yogi Bhajan, who created these teachings, would have taught something that would make them like himself. I just can't understand why they can't see that. But anyway, given as it is, they want to try to separate the teacher from the teachers. Well, Yogi Bhajan was the teachings, and so much of it is just laced with all of his Shiv Shakti worship, his mantras and tantras that are cut from Gurbani. It's just going to lead them down the wrong path. And I think it's an impossible situation that they're going to just end up being in a really debauched state. Plus, they also have this situation where you've got these Yogi Bhajan followers who are, I call them hardcore followers, who refuse to even accept that Yogi Bhajan was a rapist and that he attacked, sexually attacked and abused many of his students. You've got people who just won't even accept that. And so they're going to be infighting, and they've just had these Sri Singh Sabha Corporation elections, and it'll probably be split. They'll probably keep fighting like that. And for all of those who are thinking about taking Kundalini Yoga or taking it, you should really look closely at how these people have created this whole organization, which is infighting, which is creating just a horrendous situation. If Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga and Tantric Yoga was supposed to create saints and people who would be sages and great masters, I think this is the best evidence that you can ever see that where are the saints? Where are the sages? I don't see them. I see a bunch of people fighting about some, cult leader and his teachings, who, this cult leader was just a customs officer and was out there, trying to grab money and power and sex. And that's all I see, really. I don't see any saints and liberated people out there. So for anybody who's looking at this group or looking at trying to join this group or trying to join the Kundalini yoga practitioners and everything like that, just really examine that. And also, I think it's really telling how much they charge for all these things. They pump this all up as being some great thing where you're going to feel better and everything. Well, I'll tell you, as I've said before, unless you really have guidance from a true guru, you really don't know what feels good. You really don't know what is creating true happiness. It's only through the grace of a true guru that one can really realize happiness or really know what happiness is. You're never going to know it by yourself. That's my take after 66 years of living on this planet. So, I know I've talked a lot in this video, and again, I want to encourage people to buy this book, Under the Yoga Mat. I think it's a very good book. I think that she's given a lot of good summaries of a lot of these interviews. And, to be honest, I didn't listen to all of the interviews that Guru Nishan Kar posted. There was really hundreds of hours. So the book really boils down and summarizes many of these interviews. And it's really an eye-opener. Some of it is hard reading. And some of you may find it, as they say, triggering. But I think it's worth it. And I think that it's worth to face the truth, to really be open to the experiences and the pain that people have been suffering from in this Yogi Bhajan cult. I think that there was a lot of abuse, a lot of pain inflicted on these people who were searching really sincerely for a spiritual path. And Yogi Bhajan just really, he really was very disappointing and very damaging in his teachings, all I can say. And I think that there's probably Sikhs don't really believe in a hell, but as the saying goes, I think there's probably a special place in hell for him. After all the experiences I had with him, and then all the experiences I've read about. And I've talked to a lot of these, I said not a lot, but some of the women who were abused by Yogi Bhajan, I've talked to them personally, and it's not something people make up. A lot of these 3HO Yogi Bhajan followers currently now, they say, oh, these women made these stories up. They don't make them up. It's just not something that you can go through such pain like that to make up stories for what? They're not getting any money out of it. They're not getting any notoriety out of it. So I want to leave you with the thought that if you were to, again, take any of these Yogi Bhajan courses or teacher trainings or whatever like that, if you do end up taking them, ask tough questions about some of the things that are mentioned in this book and see what the trainers tell you. I think that'll be really telling about how they answer these questions, or if they even answer them at all. Many of the people that I've talked to say that they just whitewash over some of these questions and they don't really want to deal with them. I think that's really telling about, you know, if somebody's really a real teacher of whatever spiritual discipline you're investigating. All right, well, thank you for your time. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.